So in America, we have this problem of eating too much. We're gluttonous. We're eating all the wrong things and we're sedentary. It just, all these light bulbs started going off. I started remembering a lot of things we learned. And I was like, oh my God, I think we're practicing medicine backwards. I basically had gone over to the dark side, right? And I'm not proud of it per se. I did what I had to do at the time for my kids. You don't have to have diabetes forever. We still get very angry calls from the doctors out here for quote unquote fixing their patients. I had a doctor call me on the phone and scream and yell at me for reversing her patient's fatty liver. When she finally calmed down, I said, what is it that you're really upset about? And at the end of the day, she actually said to me, this patient is not going to need to see me anymore.
I'm happy to have Dr. Nishida here, all the way from Oahu. I assume you're in Oahu. I think you're there if I looked up where you're at. You're on the North Shore of Hawaii, is that right?
No, not the North Shore. I'm right in Honolulu.
Oh, you're in Honolulu. Okay, I saw something from Kailua or something. I saw something attached to your name.
Oh, that's where our office is located.
Oh, okay. That's what. Okay, yeah. Because I've been to Oahu a few times, and real pretty place.
Oh, good.
It's such a beautiful part of the world. You are, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have you're a PharmD, pharmaceutical doctor, and you have a ketogenic metabolic therapy practice. Is that fair to say? Or maybe you just tell us your background if you don't mind.
Yeah, I do. So I was a pharmacist for, a solid 10 years. And then at that time, I actually became a single parent. And one of my friends actually convinced me to go into Big Pharma. And I actually thought you and I maybe should talk about that a little bit today. I think your viewers will find that interesting. Sure. But did that for about 14 years and then just got sick of all that stupidity, really. I don't know what other word there is for it.
When you say convince you to go into Big Pharma as a pharmacist, what does that mean?
Because as a pharmacist, you work terrible hours. You work rotating shifts. It's a very stressful, miserable job. Honestly, I don't know how a lot of people can stay in pharmacy as long as they do, especially in retail pharmacy. You're like standing all day. You're just counting pills all day. No one's feeling well. Everyone's wondering why their prescription's taking so long. There's all these factors that you have to deal with. And because I was a single parent and I didn't have help with my kids at the time, it was too hard for me. So my girlfriend was a drug rep, basically. And she's like, dude, you should do this. You make your own hours. You'll have a much easier time. They'll hire you in a second. You have the personality for it. And I actually initially wanted to stick into that. So I was in pharmaceutical sales for a while.
And selling to what, physicians, or who are you selling to?
Endocrinologists primarily, because I sold insulin, and primary care physicians. Yeah. So diabetes was the disease state that I was working in.
And this is all in Hawaii, or where was that?
All in Hawaii.
Okay. How bad is diabetes in Hawaii? I imagine some of the native Hawaiians probably are disproportionately affected by it, would be my guess. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but where do you see that?
It's terrible. Our rate of, if you rope in pre-diabetes into that, is over 60% of our population.
The whole population of Japan, not Japan, of Hawaii. I know there's a lot of Japanese immigrants there, and there's Native Americans, there's a lot of Caucasians and stuff like that, but across the board, 60% pre-diabetic.
Pre-diabetes and diabetes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. We eat a lot of rice out here. Native Hawaiians like taro and poi. I don't know if you tried that when you were out here.
I think I have. At some point, I probably tried some of that stuff. I don't think I enjoyed it that much. That was okay, but yeah.
Yeah.
Huge diabetes rates. You mentioned eating a lot of rice because everybody said, look at the people in Asia, they eat all this rice and they're all thin and stuff like that. But the reality is, and there's actually studies that have shown this, that certain populations in Asia, rice consumption is directly related to diabetes. And we see that, and particularly as they eat larger and larger amounts. Now, if you eat a small little amount, which is sometimes the case, and I think one of the reasons why we have such relatively lean populations in Eastern Asian areas is because of the overall consumption of food is lower per capita. I think,
a lot
in many ways.
Smaller portions.
Right.
They're not. In America, we're very gluttonous. It's gross. We're gluttonous. And in Asia, they walk everywhere. They use a lot of public transportation, trains, subways, buses, and they walk. So in America, we have this problem of eating too much. We're gluttonous. We're eating all the wrong things, and we're sedentary. And it's not like that there.
Yeah, I think you make a couple points. Certainly, our food is designed to be overconsumed. It's literally engineered to be addictive and hyperpalatable, and
Yes.
we overconsume it. And then most American cities, because we have so much space, it's like we've got these huge, vast highways, and it's impractical to walk to the grocery store. For me, the nearest grocery store to my house is 5 or 6 miles, and I could do it, but then you got to add in an extra 3 hours to your day just to walk to get groceries. Whereas if you live in a European city, or maybe a city in Asia where you can walk 10 minutes, they're here about all these little 10-minute, 15-minute trips. And whenever we go overseas and we go on vacation, I walk like crazy. Sometimes when I'm in California on the beach, I'll go walk all the time. But yeah, walking, I think that's a huge part of it for sure. Outside of just nutrition, there's a lot of other lifestyle things. So I guess, you were selling drugs, selling insulin to docs. You got this huge diabetes. It's interesting to see that the more pharmaceutical drugs that are developed for diseases, the disease rates don't go down anyway. It's not like the diseases are going, they just go more. It's like we've got more drugs, but we got more disease. It's not like the drugs are actually curing the disease. It's just perpetuating this sort of disease management model that came into vogue about 25 years ago. I remember when I first heard that term, it was disease management. As a physician, I hadn't heard that term before. And I said, what is disease management? Oh, you mean you just keep people chronically medicated? And then that's where we are as a healthcare system. And so it's a huge business. And I would imagine as a pharmaceutical rep, you might even make more money than you did as a pharmacist. I don't know. Some of them get paid really well.
Depending what area you're in, some of these reps are making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. Yeah. It's a cushy life. I'm going to tell you that. It's very interesting because I basically had gone over to the dark side, right? And I'm not proud of it per se. I did what I had to do at the time for my kids and just scheduling and that type of thing. But I will say that my time in there taught me a lot of really valuable people skills and communication skills that I have to use every day in my medical practice now with patients. It's interesting. So it did help me accumulate a certain skill set that I have to use with my patients now in my practice.
Yeah, I remember the pharmaceutical reps. Some were my friends. I'd work out with them. In orthopedics, we had equipment reps basically selling us implants and stuff like that. These little fracture plates you put in, or prosthetic joints, and they're good guys. I mean, like ex-NFL athletes. In orthopedics, He-Man, masculine testosterone specialty in general. There's obviously exceptions, but some of my friends, they're good people, but they have to be, in general, pharmaceutical reps are relatively attractive, fit, physically appearing people with good personalities. And that's what they cultivate to sort of get you to be persuasive in a way. And again, there's obviously, and I know some of those equipment reps were making as much or more money than I was making as a surgeon, which is, damn, man, all you're doing is standing around. You got very little liability. I'm the guy with all the risk. You're taking the liability because I'm operating the patient. You're just standing there telling me to use that size screw or something. So it's an interesting situation there. At what point did you, I assume you said, hey, I'm not ethically aligned with it. Was there a point when you said, this is just not the right thing for me to be doing?
This was starting in about 2014. And it was interesting because right around that time, a very close family member had a heart attack. And I don't know if you know this, but out here in Hawaii, we have Shriners Hospital for Children.
I work at the Shriners,
Yeah, the we're in orthopedics. So the pediatric neurologists there, actually, they do keto for the kids that go there with epilepsy, with autism. They do keto in these kids. And it was one of his colleagues that told me, you should put your family member on keto. He had a heart attack? What? And I was like, what's keto? And you should research it. And that just, I went down that rabbit hole. It catapulted me into where I am now. And as I was learning about just cutting back on carbs and that whole thing, I was like, is it just me? Or does this make complete sense? It just, all these light bulbs started going off. I started remembering a lot of things we learned back in pharmacy school. And I was like, oh my God, I think we're practicing medicine backwards. And so my practice now in Hawaii has been open for 5 years. So I've seen 3,000 patients in 5 years.
Okay. What kind of, as a pharmacist, I think you said you're partnering with, I looked at your website, you're partnering with a cardiologist, I think, and maybe an oncologist or something I saw. And so what kind of patients are you attracting there, and what are you guys doing, and how are the results seem to be?
Yeah, so my partner, Dr. Markaren, she's an interventional cardiologist, and she's a DO, so she definitely is into looking at the whole patient and that type of thing. Most of my patients, actually, I would say half come off of social media and just seeing a post or two that I've done, just talking about you don't have to have diabetes forever, and I see everything from head to toe. I'm seeing cancer, I'm seeing Alzheimer's, I'm seeing epilepsy in little kids, diabetes, of course, because so many people have it, heart attacks, strokes, autoimmune conditions, hormonal imbalances, you name it. Everything walks through our door. And my job is to basically tailor. We do keto, ketovore, carnivore, basically. I let the patient decide how they want to start. I eventually get everyone over to really more of a carnivore lifestyle at some point. But a lot of people initially, I think, have a little bit of a tough time letting go of all of their vegetables. That's very scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, vegetables I never liked, so I had no problem ditching vegetables personally. But yeah, right. I can see some of the others, some fruit or whatever, some sort of crunchy foods or whatever they like to eat. But yeah, sure. Okay. So you have this spectrum of things you get people to do. And how hard is it to do in Hawaii, by the way? I know they got grass finished beef out there, and they've got, I guess you can't eat those chickens that are running around.
No, we have access. We have farms out here that are really good. Yeah. So we have everything we need to do this. Mm-hmm. What's interesting, though, is I still, to this day, the law, in order for me to bill someone's insurance for all of our appointments, that's why I have to partner with an MD. Okay, so for now, that's how our laws are written. Otherwise, I'd just probably be doing this on my own. And for me, it's important to accept insurance just so that I can also help Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE patients. So that's just my model for now. But it's interesting because we still get very angry calls from the doctors out here for quote unquote fixing their patients. I'm still to this day dealing with some of that.
Angry because you're feeding them meat and you're going to raise their cholesterol? Or are they angry because when you fix them and you say, hey, look, they no longer have diabetes, they no longer have this autoimmune issue, and they're no longer requiring as much of your service, are they mad about that, or you think it's just they think you're harming them?
They're mad about that. I had a doctor call me on the phone and scream and yell at me for reversing her patient's fatty liver. And when she finally calmed down, I said, what is it that you're really upset about? And at the end of the day, she actually said to me, this patient is not going to need to see me anymore. You took this patient away from me. And I was like, but aren't we supposed to be helping the patient? And she actually said, no. And I was really shocked.
It should have been interesting to see that.
Yeah. And we don't have a single endocrinologist out here that refers their diabetes patients to us. Only one oncologist out here will refer their cancer patients to us. And that's terrible, in my opinion. Because at that point, you're just ignoring so much of the data and the information that's out there. And it's just not accepted.
Obviously, you've seen 3,000 some patients, so somebody's coming out. Somebody's coming to see you guys, for sure.
Yeah. So it's not physician referrals by any means. It's patients, the story that they've heard the information, they've seen things on social media or YouTube. Intuitively, they know, I want to try this. This sounds like the right thing. I'm sick and tired of medications. She's saying that she can help get me off of some of these medications. These are the people that walk through our door.
Yeah. And I see it too. I'm clearly, I came from a practice where I was doing orthopedics, which there was literally zero interest in orthopedics and nutrition for the most part. You look through all the textbooks and then they might talk a little bit about vitamin D and calcium in the context of a fracture, but in general, nutrition is largely completely ignored by my specialty. And when I started getting excited about this, there was no level of interest, no level of resource. When you think about the resources I had as a surgeon to do a surgical procedure, I had literally millions of dollars of facility and personnel at my disposal so I could do these procedures. But if I wanted to do a research, a lifestyle intervention, nothing. It was nothing.
Right.
Here, go watch this video. Here, read this book. That's it. There's no coaching, no support. There's no meetings. There's no physician deprescribing. There's no coaching. There's no training, which I had to build in order to create that resource for people to utilize. And so, yeah, I see that. And I continue to see on a daily basis, both within my own interaction with the people we take care of at our company and what I see on social media, an enormous number of people that are coming off medications, and many of the physicians are becoming superfluous, and they're becoming like, I don't need you anymore. Again, you figure out as a physician, you go to school, you go to medical school, you have 4 years of undergraduate, 4 years of medical school. In my case, 5 years of surgical training. It's 13 years I've invested in this, and then all of a sudden you're like, no one needs me now. That's annoying. What the hell? What did I do with my life? And I think that probably if we were to actually feed ourselves and practice a lifestyle, probably 75% of the physicians would no longer be needed. We just wouldn't need as much because right now we have such a huge chronic disease issue.
What length of time would that take? There's the population in general, I think, is so unhealthy. That would take a lot of years before there was business
it would probably take a decade or two, I think, to make that transition. Now, the financial incentives are hard because there's a multi-trillion-dollar industries that are dependent upon this chronic disease, sickness, garbage nutrition, and then the pills to manage the symptoms. And I think that to transfer that wealth into another sector is what would have to happen. And so you'd have to show how can someone else benefit. And what I look at is I look at all these other industries and say, look, if you're spending, 30% of your expenditures are on employee health care, which is very probably realistic for many companies. And now you can cut that in half or even cut it by 80%.
Yes.
How much more productive could you be? How much more profitable could you be as a company? And then you start aligning those industries against the healthcare sector. And I guess I'm somewhat of an we shouldn't have, our GDP should not be 20% healthcare or whatever it is in this country. We should not be investing $4.5 trillion in healthcare and most of that chronic disease. That is a waste. We're incredibly inefficient at delivering healthcare and delivering results of healthcare because we're not even in the top 10. And we spend by far more than anybody else. I think we're like 30th in the world in healthcare outcomes and longevity. Now we're going down, and I think enough people are getting frustrated, which is interesting. Every you and me, there are thousands more physicians who are waking up to this stuff and finally figuring out that, hey, I got to get out of this corporate medicine nonsense, which has not got the patient's best interest in mind. It's got the stockholders' interest in mind, and so
exactly
that's where we're at.
Exactly.
You found a couple other physicians to partner with you. How did they find you? Did you find them? How did that eventuate? Was it something like you were at a meeting, or how did you find these people who are like keto friendly in Hawaii?
What's interesting is the first doctor that I was paired with when I first started doing this in 2019 was a GI doctor. And I was excited. That's perfect, great. Gut health, keto, this is going to be great. And it was good in the beginning until COVID hit. And he couldn't do colonoscopies for a little while. And so the way it works is we bill your insurance. The insurance deposits my checks. Let's say you and I are partnered. They're going to deposit my checks into your bank account, and then you have to cut me a check for whatever my portion was. He stopped doing that. And he stole $80,000 from me in a very short amount of time. And that was my first experience doing this, being partnered with this guy. And so it was the cardiologist who I had known for over 10 years. She was my dad's cardiologist. I called on her in the past for a little while. I would refer patients to her. She had started actually referring patients to me to learn how to eat right. And so I basically went to her and I said, this is what's going on. If I don't find a new partner, I'm going to have to shut my practice down, and I don't want to do that because it's working. I'm helping a lot of people. And she basically rescued me. And it's nice because 90% of our patients will do a baseline, they'll do baseline cardiac testing. Okay, so they'll do a treadmill, they'll do an echo, especially if they've never had it done. And we have them repeat testing every single year. And I just did a grand round presentations on some of our data that's coming out of our clinic, where we looked at the keto patients and we looked at annual echoes and treadmills versus a subset of her patients that are not doing keto, and everyone has diabetes. Of course, my subset didn't have diabetes anymore. And we're seeing reversal of left ventricular hypertrophy, increased ejection fractions, diastolic dysfunction is being reversed. Everything from atrial enlargement to I've had complete reversal of a huge abdominal aortic aneurysm. But in the control population that did not change their eating, everyone got worse. And I use this data to show that LDL, it doesn't matter. It matters if you have high blood sugar, okay? But if you're eating right and you're consuming the right things, you can be running around with an LDL of 190 or 220 or whatever. And if your triglyceride to HDL ratio looks great, your heart and your cardiovascular system is not worsening. And that was one of the whole points of me putting this data together, because I do get a lot of flack on lean mass hyperresponders. I'm a lean mass hyperresponder. A subset of patients that do keto and carnivore, their LDL does go up, right? Because their body's basically just pumping out more fuel, but their triglycerides might be 40 and their HDL is 90. Does this mean they're going to have a heart attack or stroke? No. So because of how our practice is set up, I think we're the only cardiologist keto doctor pair in the world right now. This is the kind of stuff that we're collecting. And so it's nice. It's good.
It's particularly interesting, the objective echocardiography data showing the improved ejection fraction, which I've seen a number of people where their EF was 30 CHF guys, and now it's in the 50s and 60s back towards normal. You've seen the reduction in ventricular hypertrophy, which is pretty cool. That's really neat. That's really interesting. Hopefully you guys get a chance to publish some of that stuff, because I think that would be quite powerful data. And we're getting more and more of that. And I know with the lean mass hyperresponder data that Matt Budoff is currently doing at UCLA. That's interesting. It's interesting stuff. And I think we're going to see more and more of this nuance around there. And honestly, the skeptic or the cynic in me, the conspiracy theorist in me, is what I see is I think we're going to see a sort of an adoption of a more metabolic approach to cardiovascular disease, only because the fact that now they have these like GLP-1 drugs, which they're going to start crowing about the cardiovascular benefit of these drugs, and they're going to probably like soft pedal and back pedal a little bit on the LDL lowering stuff, because they've already made their money. They've made their $1 trillion on statins. Are now off patent. Now they still make a couple billion a year. They're still making money on it, but it's not the big money which they can get out of the GLP-1. So they're going to be pushing the GLP-1s pretty hard for cardioprotective benefit. You know, the same things you could do with a low carb diet, basically, without the cost and without the side effects. And so I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to see that there's going to be more nuance, but it's like everybody needs to be on GLP-1 now for cardioprotective, or some version of that, whatever. They'll develop another drug that has some similar cardioprotective things. I think it'll still be incretin based, but we'll see how that goes. That's my prediction, just because I predict on where's the money, who's going to benefit the most from this financially, and that's probably a pretty safe bet in many ways. But the cardiologist, so it is unusual, and I know there are a number of cardiologists that are now keto carnivore friendly. There are some out there. There's a handful, not a lot. But how did that person come to the decision that, hey, this is okay to put people on a diet of all this horrible saturated fat? And I'm saying that in air quotes there, but for those who can't see it. How did he or she, I'm not sure who the doctor is, come to that decision? Do you know?
She actually is the only doctor that visited my former practice location, sat down with me for an hour, and asked me to show her all of my handouts and exactly what I teach patients. And after she did that, she realized that it's not at all what she thought it was going to be. It's we call it dirty keto, right? Which drives me nuts, like social media keto, dirty keto, where people assume that all I'm doing is telling your patient to eat bacon all day and pork rinds all day and a bunch of salami and cheese. And that's not at all what I'm saying to eat. And so once she saw that with her own eyes, it really like a light bulb, I think, went off for her. And she then just felt very comfortable that, hey, you know what? This makes sense. She herself is probably 90% keto on any given day. I don't think she's fully carnivore yet. It's funny because she's actually 65 years old. And she and I agree to disagree about statins and LDL. And even though she's my personal physician too, my LDL has been 190 for almost 8 years now. And we do my cardiac testing every single year. And all we've done is see improvement in all of my testing year over year and all of my patients. But I think it's hard for them to let go. It's interesting because I asked her one day, I said, why you've seen all of this in our own practice? And just to be clear, she does not refer all her patients to me. I'm able to get a lot of patients walking in through the door themselves without her having to send all her patients over. But when I asked her why she just can't let go of the LDL statin narrative, because she's done stents and she's seen heart attack victims, she says, when you cut them open and you see the plaque and you see how much cholesterol that plaque is comprised of, she goes, you can't tell me that the LDL is not causing that. I've tried to talk to her about it's sugar that makes the LDL particles smaller and sticky. It's not the LDL that's causing the initial plaque buildup. I have talked to her about this, but I think because of what she's seen and because she's done things a certain way for so long, she can't move away from that. So it's interesting because she's okay with what I do. She knows the benefits. She pretty much does it herself. She still has this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, this person's got an LDL over 100. We're going to put them on a statin.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that when the vast majority of people eating a metabolically unhealthy diet, having elevated cholesterol in that setting, probably the confluence of those factors probably is leading to increased heart cardiovascular disease. But again, what happens if you improve the metabolic health to the degree where
Right.
we have this lean mass hyperresponder phenomenon that Dave Feldman and now Matt Budoff have interestingly demonstrated. And I think that's still, in my view, it raises a lot of nuance around this topic. And like I said, if you were to say, if I can make someone's LDL cholesterol zero, they're not likely to have heart disease. I think that's true. However, there's a lot of problems with that approach as well. It's like I said, if I didn't want to have, like I said, if I was worried about having glaucoma, and I said, let's cut your eyes out, and you won't have to worry about glaucoma. Yeah, you're not going to have glaucoma, but there may be some negatives associated with that. So it's one of those sort of scenarios where these people, there are cardiologists that want our LDL cholesterol is 20 milligrams per deciliter, some ridiculously low that's never heretofore been known to exist in human beings outside of a newborn infant. And a lot of them say newborn infants are the only ones that have normal cholesterol. And I'm like, as soon as they start breastfeeding, and there's a nice study on this, by 13 weeks of breastfeeding, their total cholesterol is above 200. And you're like, what? Are you saying now that breastfeeding is killing infants? That doesn't make sense. This is a physiologically appropriate number. And you probably see, I don't know how long you're in the pharmaceutical selling industry, but there was a period of time when 300 total cholesterol was considered, hey, that's normal range. Then it was 240, then it was 200, now it's 190. And they keep bringing the number down and down because it's never made a difference. And they're like, it's got to keep going lower and lower. And I think it has consequences. Obviously, there's more studies to come. We'll see once Budoff releases the 1-year data, which hopefully will be forthcoming, because I know it's done. They've got it. They just haven't released it yet. One of the interesting things that I have heard through the grapevine, and it's not official and it's not been published yet, but there are people within that lean mass hyperresponder cohort that did have some plaque, but it's actually reversed, which would be quite a interesting thing if it turns out to be true. I can't, like I said, it's all rumor. It's been apparently there's some of the patients have leaked their own data and said, look, I had a little bit of plaque in my arteries and now it's gone away after another year of 600 LDL or something like that. So we'll see what that shows. And that hopefully will continue to make people start to realize there's more nuance here and question some of the sort of the narrative. Because when I went to medical school back in the late 1989, when I first started in medical school, I can remember hearing family practice physicians. This is when statins were just starting to come out, right? This is late 80s. They were literally talking about putting it in water back then. Well, it should be in the water for everybody. This was a narrative. Oh, everybody's cholesterol's too high. We need to bring it down across the population and it'll save the day. And statistically, I think from the 1970s versus, I don't know, around 2000 or so, we brought LDL cholesterol average or total cholesterol down from 220 to 200. So 20 point, which is a huge reduction on a population scale. And it did nothing for heart disease incidence. Nothing. So it's like, what are we doing here? So you said cancer, because that's a very controversial topic. Oh my God. For some reason we have this cancer. It's its own entity that if you talk about cancer, anything but nuclear radiation, bombing it, cutting it out, chemotherapy, that's you're a quack, you're a nut job. I think that nutrition helps. I don't care what the condition is. I don't care if it's cerebral palsy. Good nutrition is going to help you.
Right.
What's your experience? Because you now have an oncologist that I think is attached to you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about the cancer stuff.
So very interestingly, the island of Maui. So we do have an office location on Maui too, and that's where the oncologist is located. And Hawaii as a state was initially a lot of sugar plantations, pineapple plantations. That was how all of the Asians came over, was to work plantations, right? And because everything was just so heavily sprayed for so many decades, Maui has this incredibly high cancer rate, just every type of cancer from head to toe. And so her practice is booming. She just can't stop turning people away. And what she knows through her own training, whatever that was over the course of her lifetime, and she used to work, I think, in California and then came over to Hawaii, was that if you can get people into ketosis, not only can you prevent the return of cancer, their chemotherapy is going to work better, meaning you can have a patient on lower doses, fewer treatments, and with a lot less side effects. And we do see that in the patients that we see together. I do have a very small subset of our patients that want to try this first before making a final decision about chemo and radiation. And it really just is about supporting them in that way, teaching them about all the different types of proteins. Do you get this, Shawn? Like, I might say a blanket statement. Okay, I need you to start to eat more protein. Okay, as we cut back on your carbs, I need you to eat more protein. And I get a blank stare. Like, what? But people don't even know anymore what protein is. And you know what I have to do with some people is their homework is, I need you to go to the grocery store this weekend. I literally need you to stand in the meat department. Now I'm asking you to look at every different cut of red meat, pork. I want you to read labels. I want you to look at weights. I want you to know what 8 ounces of steak looks like, what 12 ounces of pork looks like, because most people have never really taken the time to do this. A lot of people don't even know how to cook anymore, right? And so it's interesting. And so we are just getting a lot of good results in terms of, we get a lot of patients that have a history of cancer and now want to do this to prevent the return. It's Otto Warburg, sugar feeds cancer, and people don't realize how many different types of foods actually turn into sugar. And just that initial part of their education is very eye-opening for them.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly, my experience is similar in the, like I said, I don't directly treat cancer, but I've had a lot of patients that have undergone cancer treatments. And when they adopt a ketogenic or a carnivore diet, pretty much the experience has been, the therapy has been much better tolerated. They have way less side effects. They feel better. And so even if you decide to use it as an adjuvant or an adjunct therapy rather, it's beneficial in many ways. And you don't have to deal with the cancer cachexia as much. It's just, like I said, I know there are people that use it as a standalone therapy, and there's clinics that are dedicated to doing that, and they've had some pretty interesting results. But as far as, like I said, any condition in which you can improve the overall nutrition of the patient, you're going to improve the outcomes. I don't care if it's healing up from total knee replacement or cancer therapy or Tourette syndrome or bipolar disorder, whatever it might be. It's so incredibly important. And there are, with regard to ketogenic therapies, there have been a number of studies now starting to look at particular certain types of cancer, like brain cancer. It's got a couple studies published on that, and they're showing that there is clearly some benefit there. But if you look at most of the oncology literature, much of it will support plant-based diet. We're going to plant-based diet. That's based on assumptions based on associational epidemiological data, which is just horrible. It's horrible data. It's just poor quality research. And until we start getting the RCTs and the other things that cost a lot of money and no one wants to pay for because there's no profit in it, you can RCT to death all the drug trials. They've got billion-dollar budgets where they can do these long extended trials. And
exactly.
with the payout, you worked in the company, there's a lot of money. So it's hard to get this data out there. And
so much money. You can't wrap your head around it. Yeah. This is the thing, is that I think people don't realize what a nutritional deficit they're running on a daily basis. Before they start working with people like you and I, they're just so nutrient deficient. And to start to eat in a way that is nutrient dense in and of itself is going to be so beneficial for your body. How long have you been doing carnivore? How many years?
I am approaching my 8th year. I've done it 7.5, a little over 7.5 years. I started in the end of 2016 is when I started. So we're almost, second half of 2024. So almost 8 years.
Okay, so same. So I'm coming up on my 8th year as well. And I don't know, I wanted to ask you a question. So I do a little broccoli here and there, a little bok choy here and there, definitely not on a daily basis. Can I even call myself carnivore at that point or no? Because I actually wasn't sure.
You would, again, there's a lot of nuances. I have 9% of my diet, without exaggeration, is red meat or eggs or seafood or sometimes a little bit of dairy products. That has been my diet for the whole time. Now, there have been a few times when I've had something off the plan, but I think it's less important to worry about what you label yourself as. It's what do you do on a daily basis? What's your typical pattern? What do you do for the vast majority of time? And that's what we're really concerned about, because the truth be told, there's a lot of things that we are exposed to. Just pollution in the air. In Hawaii, probably nicer than other places because you got the sea breezes and all that stuff. But it's just, there's always going to be something that is going to be less than optimal that you just have to deal with. And I think that I just try not to be religious about this whole thing. There's some people that are like, oh my God, if you eat a blueberry, you're now kicked out of the club and you're an awful, it's not like reverse veganism where it's ideologically, oh my God, you ate an egg. How could you dare do something like that? And you're like an evil, awful person. I don't really care that much about it. For all intents and purposes, I am about as strict of a carnivore as realistically possible. And I think that's fair enough. Now, if you have, I don't know what would attract you to broccoli, to be honest, in my view, because I don't like it. But if you have a piece every once in a while, what is your dietary pattern in general? And if it is meat, eggs, fish, dairy products, and then you are essentially, on a carnivore diet and to be honest, I think most people that do it will occasionally include something else in there. And there's no award for being it's not a purity test or anything like that. It's about how do you get healthy? How do you stay healthy? What are the things that are working for you? And what can you sustain? And if you've got those things that's working for you, then I don't worry about what you call yourself. I often put up, I'm doing these athletic things. I'm saying today I had this steak fueled me to do this, and this is what I did. And that's usually what I eat. And so I don't get too worried about what other people eat, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, because I do have people ask me, and I'm like, there's a spectrum. And on any given day, I'm falling somewhere on this spectrum. But on my worst day, I'm keto. You know what I mean? But it's like you said, in my 5 years of doing this as an actual medical practice, there are so many nuances. And in women, if they're going through perimenopause, postmenopause, somewhere in that range, things have to be tweaked a lot for them at times. Men, my male patients, I have a much easier time with. These are the guys that I'm like, do straight carnivore, steak, eggs, real butter, that type of thing. And they do very well on it very quickly. And women, there just seems to be a lot more nuances. We're typically much more hormonally complex. And it's not something that when I first started doing this almost 8 years ago, I was trying to learn how to do it myself. There weren't a lot of like keto doctors or carnivore doctors out in practice back then, right? So I had no one that I could go to, and I completely did it wrong. And it was based on things that I was seeing off of social media. So think back 8 years ago on social media, what was being posted at the time. Like for some reason, I ended up eating a lot of salami and cheese. Not every day, but a lot more than I was before. And my knee blew up. It was huge. And the orthopedic surgeon told me, you have gout. And I was like, I don't have gout. You didn't even check my uric acid. How do you know I have gout? And he was, you have gout. But I think, and I didn't have gout, but I think because I was eating so much crappy dairy and just nitrates through the salami, I don't know, like my body did not like it. But that's not how you do this lifestyle anyway. And so it's just interesting how things have evolved and the information has evolved over the years. And you're right. I just hope more and more doctors jump on board. What state are you in? I don't even know.
I currently live in Washington State.
Okay. And what's the consensus out there?
The consensus on nutrition
well, just on your lifestyle and using
I'm not hanging out in the local medical community. I'm pretty much doing stuff digitally. So I suspect it's like the same everywhere else. The vast majority of people are bought into the corporate medicine narrative. And that's probably what 98% of the physicians believe. We do have, in fact, I actually had one of them come over to my house, a physician locally that's practicing carnivore. So there are, like I said, a small subset, probably, I don't know, 1 out of 1,000 doctors here probably does keto or carnivore or something like that. I think those numbers are growing. Now, clearly they are. I've seen, in fact, for our company, we have something like 200 physicians like on our waiting list to come work with us because we know there's a lot of physicians that are interested in just practicing in a different way. They're just fed up with the bureaucracy, the administration's nonsense, the sort of algorithmic based medicine. They want to be able to actually help people instead of just give them another pill. So we're seeing a shift for sure. So I like I said, it's probably several years away that we've got that, but I think there's a threshold point. Once we get enough people on board, and it's going to be grassroots. There's no top down. You're not going to have the next president say, hey, everybody, we need to stop eating all this ultra-processed crap and eat more meat and eggs. That's not going to happen.
Right.
Maybe I'll get surprised. I don't think so, though. And certainly not any corporation is going to lose money on that. It's going to get up there and promote that. So we've got to push it from the grassroots level. And social media is very important for this. And
it is.
And that's why I talk to everybody that says, hey, if you've seen some benefit, then just share your information. You don't have to be religious about it. But just say, hey, look, this is what worked for me. It might be something you consider. Go check out these particular bits of information, and that's how we continue to grow it because it is growing. There's no doubt about it. From when I started, the first time I was on Rogan back in 2017 versus today, it is multiple orders of magnitude better. It is 100x, 1,000x from what it was back then. And it's still growing. It's still growing strong because you can see how much backlash is now being put out there. Everybody on social media, they're trying to make a living by criticizing it. Because this is a hot topic. It's like everybody. If it's interesting, somebody's going to criticize. I don't know. Somebody's going to be pro. Somebody's going to be against. And if it was insignificant and inconsequential, no one would be talking about it. But because so many people are now doing it and experiencing these positive results, there's a lot of people that have opinions on it. And like I said, I'm just here like saying, hey, this is a potential option for people. Consider it.
Yeah.
And why not? What's the downside? People are talking, we don't have long-term research data on this. I'm like, well, you put people on these drugs, which don't have 20-year data. You got maybe three-year trial or something like that in a very controlled setting. And you're going to release it on the general population without any long-term data. We're happy to do that all day long. As physicians, where do I sign up? Let me write the thing. When are you going to take me to my? I don't know. When I was working, I know the various reps. We would have some drug reps come in there selling us Vioxx and Celebrex and all the different anti-inflammatories and some of the pain medicines. And they'd always come. They'd bring us lunch, and they would that type of stuff, which is just. It still goes on. I mean, there was this Sunshine Act where they supposedly limited that, but it still happened pretty routinely. I don't know if you're involved in that, but
it still happens. We still have reps bring lunch to our office, and Most of them they're nice, like you said, very nice people. You can have a degree in anything as long as you have a 4-year college degree to do this job. You don't have to have any type of medical background, right? You are taught to say the company narrative and you rehearse it and you have to present it and have people say you did it well. And then that's what you go out to all the doctor's offices and you parrot that. You are taught how to look through a package insert so that if you're asked a question, you know where to find the answer in the package insert, because by law, that's what you're allowed to refer to as information. But, you know, it's just interesting because as a pharmacist by trade, and I did actually work in hospital and retail pharmacy, and then spending time in the industry, and then now doing this, I'm the pharmacist that's going to try to get you off your medications. Why? Because I understand the science behind it. And I understand the money that goes into it. And I understand the risks when you have, like, to your point, a randomized clinical trial of X number of patients. That doesn't necessarily represent what's going to happen when that medication gets out to the general population. I personally think Ozempic is in big trouble. I had the scientific liaison for that drug sit down in my office with me and admit to me that their weight loss is coming from losing bone density and muscle mass. It does cause sarcopenia. It's not fat. And so I looked at him and I said, what are you guys going to do about that? That's not good. And he said, most people can't stay on it for very long. A lot of people do get some pretty bad GI side effects. And it's sad because it's not addressing the root of the problem. I think you and I know how sugar addicted people are, and everyone just wants the easy way out. And I wish more time and money could be spent, and these companies' resources could be spent on that type of effort instead of creating a drug dependency. Because look at everything that happened with OxyContin and all of that. Is Ozempic going to be like the new drug epidemic? It's crazy. We're going to see some stuff come out of this for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And like I said, and then by the time it comes out, they'll be on to the next drug anyway. Like I said, there'll be a class action lawsuit. They'll pay maybe a couple $2 billion, which will be pocket change, and then they'll just go on to the next one. And it's just the way it is. It's built into the pricing structure. Okay, we know we're gonna kill a few people. We're gonna maim a few people. Whatever. And we're making our whatever $100 billion. We'll pay $2 billion for taxes for killing people and just go on. And so that's the deal there. And of course, the counter argument is, well, if these people didn't have drugs, more people would die. And it's like trying to prove a negative. It was
right.
Reminded me of some of the COVID narrative. If they didn't have the vaccine, it would have been way worse. I'm like, how do you know? How could you prove that? You can't.
Right.
I mean, it's unprovable. So anyway, I'll tell you what, we're just almost out of time here. I want to give you a chance to just tell me, like, if someone's in Hawaii and they want to go to your clinic, where do they go? How do they find you guys? If you have any social media you want to share, please go ahead and do that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think most people, if you go to our website, the ketoprescription.com, you can learn more about what we do, what our program includes. On Instagram, we're under the Keto Prescription, and we try to cover everything from why you should do this to what the lifestyle looks like to you're not miserable, you still live a great normal life, cooking videos, meal suggestions, all of that type of thing. And really, my goal from the start was always just to help the people of Hawaii primarily because we need it here. And so I know a lot of people know who you are out here. And so it's been great just talking to you one-on-one like this and being on your podcast and having this opportunity.
You know, again, thanks for, there's another pharmacist, I think it's Grant Phillips from the UK. He's similar sort of experience. He was a pharmacist his whole life and kind of woke up to this fact that this isn't the right way to do things. And so now he is also a proponent of low carb, ketogenic, and carnivore diet. So maybe you guys at some point will run into each other. I know he's in the UK, so far, geographically, you guys are pretty far away, but philosophically, you're pretty well aligned. So,
yeah.
But anyway, it's been a pleasure. So I'll tell you what, you have a wonderful day. Go feed your chickens. You got to reach your chickens.
I know. I can hear them.
and we'll talk again sometime. Sure. Hopefully I get back to Hawaii in the near future.
Yeah, give me a buzz if you're ever out here.
I will. I will for sure. So that'd be awesome.
Okay.
All right.
All
Thank you
right,
so
Shawn.
much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.